You know, when a crime happens on some city block, our first instinct is to find that one simple culprit, right? But what if the real story isn't about a single bad guy, but about the entire scene of the crime? Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating investigation that pretty much challenges everything we think we know about what makes a neighborhood feel unsafe. Okay, let's just get right into it. Seriously, ask anyone this question and you are going to get some very confident answers. We all have this mental lineup of the types of businesses we just associate with trouble. But a groundbreaking study from researchers at the University of California, Irvine, decided to treat this question like a real cold case. And what they found suggests our usual assumptions might just be completely off base. All right, so let's start where any good investigation does, by rounding up the usual suspects. These are the businesses that, time and time again, get fingered as magnets for criminal activity. Yeah, no big surprise seeing this list, right? Countless studies, not to mention public opinion, have pointed the finger at these exact types of places. They're open late, they might sell alcohol, and they just seem to create opportunities for things to go wrong. On the surface, the case against them looks pretty open and shut, doesn't it? But, and this is a big but, this is where the whole investigation takes a really sharp turn. The UC Irvine researchers started asking a crucial question. What if we're getting tunnel vision? By focusing so hard on these specific businesses, are we totally missing other crucial evidence from the surrounding area that could change the entire story? So, the idea was, instead of just slapping the cuffs on one type of business, let's zoom out. Let's analyze the entire block as the real scene of the crime. It's about understanding the whole ecosystem. And here's the core theory they came up with. It's not about a single problem establishment. Nope. It's the general business context, literally the combination of all the businesses on a block. That's a much, much more powerful predictor of crime. It's about the whole forest, not just one suspicious-looking tree. Okay, so to actually test a cool theory like that, you can't use the old rulebook. You need a whole new set of tools. They couldn't just count up the bars and liquor stores anymore. They had to come up with a way to categorize the entire business landscape to see what patterns would pop out. First up, they defined what they call consumer-facing businesses. Basically, this is any place that's designed to pull you, the public, in off the street. Think about restaurants, shops, barber shops, all that stuff. These places bring a constant flow of people, both customers and employees, to a block, and that creates a very specific kind of energy. Then you've got the other side of the coin, white-collar and blue-collar businesses. White-collar is your office buildings, your corporate HQs. Blue-collar is more like factories, warehouses, that sort of thing. And you can just feel it, right? A block packed with office towers has a totally different vibe and completely different crime opportunities than a block filled with industrial warehouses. And this next one, this is kind of the secret weapon in their whole investigation. It's a concept called business heterogeneity. Now, it sounds fancy, but all it really means is variety. So a block with 5 of the exact same kind of store has low heterogeneity. But a block with a bookstore, a cafe, a grocery store, and a gym, that's high heterogeneity. And the researchers suspected this mix was a huge overlooked clue. All right, so they've got their new toolkit. They're ready to go. The researchers went back and re-examined all the evidence, looking at data from over 180 cities. They ran the numbers, first looking at the usual suspects all alone, and then looking at them inside this bigger business context. And what they found, well, it was a total game changer. And here it is, the bombshell. When you look at one of those usual suspects, say a convenience store, all by itself, yeah, you see that strong link to crime that we've all come to expect. But, and this is the key, the moment you factor in the block's overall business context, the variety and number of all the businesses around it, that strong link just, poof, it gets super weak or even disappears entirely. I mean, listen to how the researchers themselves put it in their paper. They say that the business's relationships with crime greatly diminish or completely evaporate once accounting for the general business context. In other words, it was never really about the convenience store. It was about the company it keeps. The real suspect wasn't the individual business. It was the entire crew it was hanging out with. But wait, the plot thickens. The case isn't quite closed yet, because as they dug even deeper into the data, they found this really strange twist. This powerful effect of the business environment, well, it wasn't the same everywhere. It actually changed depending on the surroundings. Which, of course, begs the question, right? What kind of environment makes this mix of businesses the most, well, volatile?
Where does that variety, that heterogeneity we were talking about, actually have the biggest impact on crime?
And the answer is something you would probably never guess. It's totally counterintuitive. It turns out the more business variety a block has, the higher the crime rate tends to be, but only in low population cities. That solid blue line shooting upwards, that represents the smaller cities. The theory is that in a small town, a diverse commercial block can become this regional hub that draws in tons of people, but without the policing or the established social norms of a big city's downtown. So a vibrant mixed block is actually riskier in a small town than in a huge metropolis. Wild, right?
And here's the other piece of that puzzle. The crime-enhancing effect of business variety is at its worst on blocks with very few residents living nearby. I mean, look at the graphs. As the residential population goes up, those lines just flatten out. The link to crime vanishes. It seems that having more people actually living there provides those eyes on the street. People walking their dogs, looking out their windows, just being present. That kind of natural surveillance can scare off crime, even on a really busy commercial block.
So what's the final verdict in this whole investigation? After all this detective work, what's the big takeaway? This is the part that has huge implications for how we think about safety and how we design our cities. Okay, let's break it down. First, pointing the finger at a single bar or gas station is just, it's misleading. It's scapegoating. Second, the real story is the overall business ecosystem of the block. That's a way better predictor. Third, that variety of businesses is a super powerful ingredient, but its effect totally changes depending on the context, like the city's size or how many people live nearby. And all of this just completely forces us to rethink how we plan our communities. And that leaves us right here with this one massive critical question. If we now know that the entire mix of a block is what really matters, not just one problem business, that changes everything. It's no longer about just zoning out certain businesses. It's about thoughtfully designing entire blocks, entire neighborhoods. So, what's the right mix? How do we build vibrant places that are also safe? That is the mystery that we all now have to help solve.